The number of deaths after several explosions in coal mines in TeleSUR, Colombia, rose to 21, as confirmed by the local governor Nicolás García. French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne forced through President Macron's controversial pension reform without putting it to a vote in the lower house and ignoring popular outrage over the project. And also, Israeli protesters returned to the streets to rally against the government-proposed judicial reforms. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The number of deaths after several explosions in coal mines in TeleSUR, Colombia, rose to 21, as confirmed on Thursday by the local governor Nicolás García. Colombian President Gustavo Petro regretted the incident and expressed his solidarity with the families of the victims. The sinister occurred on Tuesday night, apparently due to the accumulation of methane gas that exploded in a complex of 7 interconnected skin holes, according to local authorities. The governor of the Cundinamarca department also informed that the 9 surviving miners who had been hospitalized at the El Salvador hospital in Ubaté had been discharged. 7 of the trapped miners managed to get out alive by their own means, although 4 had to be hospitalized due to an inhalation of toxic gases.
We can now confirm the discovery of the 10 bodies we had yet to recover, all the lifeless. Unfortunately, the total number of the casualties is now 21. We are finishing the extraction from the mine ED of the last 2 bodies.
In Panama, a government report highlights that since 2007 to date, over 80,000 people have been taught to read and write thanks to a program based on the Cuban method Yo sí puedo, in English, yes, I can. The head of the Ministry of Social Development, María Inés Castillo, said that the Muévete por Panamá program restores the rights of Panamanians by providing them with a basic tool for growth, as is the ability to read and write. In this way, the minister assured that the current administration of President Laurentino Cortizo has set its sights on the most vulnerable populations, which had been excluded for many years. The success of the program is due to the fact that the classes are offered in the students' environments, where they are guaranteed the didactic implements, in addition to the training of volunteer teachers, most of whom are relatives of the illiterates. And the Argentina Statistics Agency announced the annual inflation rate tore past 100% in February. This is the first time it has hit triple figures since a period of hyperinflation in 1991, over 3 decades ago. According to data from the National Statistical Institute, INDEC, the inflation over the past 12 months has increased at 102.5%, with a higher than expected 6.6% monthly rise in February in the Consumer Price Index, and a 13.1% year-to-date total increase in prices. In this sense, the Minister of the Economy, Sergio Massa, renewed in February a voluntary agreement of fair prices with supermarkets and food, hygiene, clothing, telephone, education, and other items companies to uplift the economy with set increases of 3.2% per month up to June in about 2,000 products.
Every day here, the merchandise that arrives with an increase in price. So day by day is a little bit, but it accumulates.
It is complicated. The truth is that salaries are very low and things are increasing every second. Not day by day, it is unbearable.
In the United States, railroad officials have reported to local media that the train that derailed on Wednesday evening in western Arizona was carrying nothing but corn syrup. This was in response to an early statement made by the county sheriff's office spokesperson who alleged the train has been carrying hazardous materials. The derailment happened in a rural, non-residential area in Mohave County, Arizona, near the state's border with California. The freight railroad company stated that 8 cars derailed and are blocking the main track. The cause of the accident is under investigation, and it's still not clear when the track will reopen. On Thursday, the city of Natal, capital of the Brazilian state Rio Grande do Norte, experienced a third day of sustained drug-gun violence. In early morning, violent incidents had spread to at least 8 other cities in the state in the face of 100 backups sent by federal police. The gangs are targeting and setting on fire mainly public buses and trains, and they have placed obstacles on railway lines at several points, even at night. Therefore, ground transportation services have been suspended. The gangs have also targeted fuel pumping stations, stores, a slaughterhouse, and even 3 school buses. In some cases, the fires have damaged surrounding electrical wiring. So far, the police had made 57 arrests and seized 15 weapons, 46 explosive devices, and 10 gallons of fuel. On Wednesday, March 15th, students took to the streets of dozens of Brazilian cities to demand changes in public education. In Recife, our correspondent Brian Muir has more.
Public high school student movements and teachers' unions took to the streets in 50 Brazilian cities on Wednesday to demand that the federal government revoke the neoliberal New High Schools program, which was established by presidential decree with no public debate after the 2016 parliamentary coup and rolled out by the Bolsonaro administration.
We students are on the streets today to demand that the new high school program is revoked, because it was implemented after 2 years of pandemic and there wasn't a single study made on how it should be implemented, and we are seeing it cause various problems inside the school, including allowing teachers to teach subjects they are not qualified for.
The new high school program has lowered academic standards, reduced the numbers of hours in important subjects like history and social sciences to as little as 1 class a week, and has resulted in the elimination of art and physical education in tens of thousands of public schools across the country, widening the education quality gap between public and private schools.
School has an essential role in the lives of young people. Along with forming professionals, it has to create citizens, people who have a critical sensibility so that our society can continue to rise up when needed. But this new project of theirs is not doing that for Brazilian students.
After the protests finished, Brazil's education minister Camilo Santana announced that he's re-establishing the National Education Forum, a union and student movement oversight system for public education that was destroyed after the 2016 coup, which will have deliberative power to change national school policy. Brian Muir, TeleSUR, Recife.
Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne on Thursday told the parliament the government will force through President Emmanuel Macron's controversial pension reform without putting it to a vote in the lower house. Borne announced the move as left-wing members of parliament were singing La Marseillaise, France's national anthem, while holding up signs that read 64 years old is no, protesting the raise of retirement age of the official reform. The Council of Ministers held an emergency meeting to activate Article 49.3 of the French Constitution, which makes it possible for a text to be adopted without a vote of deputies in order to passed the pension reform just minutes before lawmakers were scheduled to vote in the National Assembly. The controversial pension reform was presented on January the 10th by the Prime Minister, and according to the bill, the authorities will start increasing the retirement age by 3 months per year as of September the 1st, 2023, until reaching 64 years of age in 2030.
We cannot gamble on the future of our pensions. This reform is necessary. Also because I am attached to our social model and because I believe in parliamentary democracy, it is on your reform, on the parliament text, the fruit of a compromise between the two chambers, that I am ready to engage my responsibility. Therefore, on the basis of Article 49, paragraph 3 of the Constitution, I commit my government's responsibility for the whole of Social Security Amendment Bill for 2023, modified by the Coordination Amendment communicated to the National Assembly.
In this context, French far-right leader Marine Le Pen stated the government's use of Article 49.3 to force its pension reform through the parliament is inadmissible.
Of course this is inadmissible, obviously, because once again, it's not a question of forcing the majority, as it's normally the nature of Article 49.3. It's a question of preventing the expression of the will of the French people through their elected representatives. They didn't manage to find a majority because they were bad. This reform was unfair, badly prepared, badly conceived, badly presented. And until the end, it was like that. Well, in these conditions, when we are faced with a potential vote against, which would obviously have been the case, we withdraw. That's it. We withdraw because, once again, that's democracy.
And after French President Emmanuel Macron on Thursday rammed a controversial pension reform through the parliament without a vote, using a rare constitutional power, protests are likely to rage. Trains, schools, public services, and ports have been affected by strikes over the last 6 weeks, while some of the biggest protests in decades have taken place, as an estimated 1.28 million people hit the streets on March the 7th. A rolling strike by municipal garbage collectors in Paris has also seen around 7,000 tons of uncollected trash pile up in the streets. Trade unions and other critics said the reform will penalize low-income people in manual jobs who tend to start their careers early, forcing them to work longer than graduates who are less affected by the changes. The change will also bring France into line with its European neighbors. The political implications could see Macron out of the presidential race in 2027 as he bids for re-election due to a large popular discontent after forcing the reform. And on Thursday, Greece woke up paralyzed by a 24-hour general strike demanding that the real culprits of the train accident that occurred in February be held accountable. The strike has been called by private and public sector unions and will be accompanied by demonstrations all over the country. The protest includes the stoppage of public transport in Athens, although some medium metro services will be provided to facilitate the movement of the citizens who want to attend the demonstrations. The strike has also been joined by air traffic controllers and sailors, so flights have been cancelled at large and ships remain moored in the ports. Likewise, many schools will remain closed as the teachers' unions have also joined the strike. Around 50,000 teachers in New Zealand went on strike on Thursday after union talks with the Ministry of Education aimed at improving salaries and conditions stalled. Outside the parliament, trade unions argued that the government's latest pay offer did not match inflation and that the education sector is at a crisis point due to teacher shortages. In this sense, the president of the New Zealand Educational Institute, Mark Potter, said improvements to teacher salaries and working conditions are essential to keep experienced staff and recruit graduates. The cost of living has become a major political issue in New Zealand as the government struggles to keep inflation at bay. Recent figures suggested the country's economy is shrinking, fueling fears of a looming recession. And the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has highlighted in an interview his support of the expansion of Russian military bases in Syria in order to balance the forces in the world. Al-Assad arrived in Moscow on Tuesday and met with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday. Both heads of state discussed the development of bilateral relations and cooperation between Moscow and Damascus in the political, humanitarian and trade economic spheres, as well as the prospects for the settlement of the Syrian conflict. In this context, the Syrian leader stated that Russia's desire to expand its military bases abroad is good and should not be temporary or limited to the fight against terrorism. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. A 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck the Kermadec Islands north of New Zealand on Thursday, prompting a brief tsunami warning. The United States Geological Survey estimated that the quake hit at a depth of 10 kilometers, spewing waves that could be measured within 300 kilometers from the epicenter. After the tremor, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in Hawaii issued a tsunami warning for nearby places. However, later on, New Zealand's government cleared that there was not such a threat. The Kermadec Islands are located on the boundary of the world's two major tectonic plates, namely the Pacific and the Australian plates. These plates collide with huge force, causing one to slowly grind over, under, and alongside the other. Israeli protesters returned to the streets on Thursday to rally against proposed judicial reforms after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected a compromise plan promoted by the country's president. Demonstrators gathered in Tel Aviv stated the reforms, several provisions of which have already been adopted by parliament, are the end of democracy. People also gathered in Jerusalem and the northern city of Haifa to denounce the overhaul that would, among other things, allow lawmakers to overhaul Supreme Court rulings with a simple majority vote. Since Netanyahu's administration announced the reforms in January, massive demonstrations have regularly taken place across Israel. Opponents of the package have also accused the premier, who faces corruption allegations, of trying to use the reforms to invalid possible judgments against him. In Ethiopia, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with African Union Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat in Addis Ababa to discuss shared global and regional priorities. During their meeting, both leaders exchanged views regarding progress in the implementation of the cessation of hostilities agreement and other regional issues of mutual interest. In his official working visit to Ethiopia, Secretary Blinken also held an in-depth discussion with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on various domestic, bilateral, and regional issues. The high government officials agreed to strengthen the long-standing bilateral relations between Ethiopia and the United States with a commitment to partnership. After his talks, Blinken headed on Thursday on a trip to Niger, being the first top U.S. Secretary of State ever to visit the country, where both France and the United States maintain forces. Asian stock markets plunged on Thursday after a drop in Credit Suisse shares reignited concerns about a possible banking crisis following the failure of two major U.S. financial firms. Stock markets in Shanghai, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Sydney fell as much as 1.5%, with major Asian banks suffering the biggest declines, and Wednesday's rally reversed. This after Credit Suisse reported a 30% drop in its shares, reviving concerns about the financial industries following the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and the Signature Bank in the second and third largest bank failures in the U.S. history. Meanwhile, experts said Asian markets will recover more easily than European and North American banks. On Thursday, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol was received by his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida in the first high-level visit in 12 years. Yoon arrived at around 11:30 a.m. local time on Thursday at Haneda International Airport in Tokyo and was later received by Kishida in an attempt to bring the two historically feuding nations closer together. The visit comes after Seoul announced a plan to settle the two countries' long-running dispute over compensation for Koreans enslaved by Japanese companies during Japanese colonial rule over Korea between 1910 and 1945, a move that was denounced as humiliating by thousands of South Koreans who protested in the streets. And let's go to the fun part. This Thursday, Japan became the only team in the history of the World Baseball Classics to reach the semifinals in all 5 tournaments. The Samurais beat Italy by 9-3 and will play the winner of the Puerto Rico-Mexico quarterfinal. In front of the more than 40,000 fans at the Tokyo Dome, the Japanese team was simply ruthless and showed their class throughout, keeping a cool head and taking no chances against its opponent. Japan took the lead in the bottom of the third. With runners at the corners, Italy's shortstop Nicky Lopez drove to stop a sharp grounder by left fielder Masaka Yoshida, and Kensuke Kondo scored from third. Even though Japan held a 5-run lead in the 7th inning, manager Hideki Kuriyama turned to Shohei Ohtani, who performed an outstanding job pitching 4.5 innings, delivering 71 pitches and earning the win. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.